Good afternoon and welcome to CCN Midday News, the rundown. I am your host, Captivating Christian, and here's some of your top stories for today, the 16th of July. Trump replaces Parscale as campaign manager. And Florida GOP caught doctoring Trump's tweets after he endangers one of their most successful secrets. Mail delays likely as new postal boss pushes for cutting. And black protester arrested by the NYPD, charged with felonies more than white demonstrator, data shows. In historic move, North Carolina City approves reparation for black residents. White House officials send documents to the Pentagon criticizing Vindman after impeachment testimony. The Pentagon got the document as Army Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman was on track to be promoted to colonel, sources say. And the White House claims that Trump is pro-LGBTQ. His policies show otherwise, however. Let's get to the news. With less than 4 months to go, President Donald Trump has orchestrated a shakeup for his struggling reelection campaign, elevating Bill Stepien to campaign manager and demoting Brad Parscale, who had been serving in that role. Trump posted on Facebook on Wednesday evening that Parscale would remain on the campaign as a senior advisor. The move comes amid falling polling numbers and mounting worries over the president's political prospects, with Trump himself expressing concern that he's losing to Joe Biden. Parscale has been under the microscope in recent weeks, particularly following Trump's half-capacity rally back in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Parscale was blamed initially for the rally after boasting beforehand that over 1 million people had signed up to attend. In private, the president repeatedly criticized Parscale for the episode. Trump began informing advisors for the shakeup Wednesday before making the announcement official. Stepien, who has been a longtime Trump advisor after joining the president's campaign in the summer of 2016, he went on to become the White House political director. After the 2018 midterms, he left the White House to join the reelection effort as a consultant. He was recently promoted to deputy campaign manager, a move intended to bolster Parscale's amidst the campaign struggle. Prior to joining the Trump orbit, however, Stepien served as a top political advisor for ex-New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. And here you are at the part where I give my commentary on the news of the hour this afternoon. So let's start with the first one. And of course, this is President Donald Trump changing it up a little bit and replacing his campaign manager 4 months before the election. Now, in the change of a campaign manager, it's not anything surprising. That usually happens, especially if the person running the polls seem to change, either mostly for the bad. Nobody really changes their campaign manager if they're in the lead and doing well. They usually always change the campaign manager if it's a repeated loss and they are like if they're behind in numbers and they continue to be behind in numbers and falling without gaining any traction, usually the campaign manager gets the boot. So this is not surprising. However, it's a different kind of situation when you are the incumbent. That means you are the person already in office, and he's done a lot. So everything he does, if it is negative, his poll numbers will drop, and there's not much he can do. It's different when he was running as just Donald Trump because people didn't know what he would do in office. So it was almost like giving him a shot in the dark, a chance. But now that the country has seen what he can do and what he's capable of, it'll be a bit huge sale to actually convince a lot of the American people that he is the best thing for America. I mean, at this point, if you really think he's the best thing for America, then you need to sit and get your head examined, like really at an institution, because there is no way at all. Not even dipping into the political realm of it as far as Democrat and Republican, just overall as a person, as a human being, as a leader, he is none of those things. So I don't know, but we'll see if he gets help from Russia again. Florida's Republicans doctored one of President Donald Trump's tweets to remove a stigma against mail-in voting. The president had been falsely claiming that there is a distinction between mail-in voting and absentee ballots, all the while exaggerating the risk of fraud. And some Republicans fear he is undermining one of their successful secrets in Florida. Politico's reported that registered Democrats have outnumbered registered Republicans for decades in Florida, but GOP candidates have frequently won on the strength of their party's absentee ballot program. The state's GOP sent out a mass solicitation intended to boost interest in voting by mail that would clean up Trump's opposition to voting by mail, which he himself has done in Florida while serving as president. However, the mailer blurred out the rest of Trump's tweet. Mailing in voting on one hand has led to the most corrupt election in U.S. history. Trump claimed in the same tweet, bad things happen with mail-ins. He just looked at special elections in Paterson, New Jersey, which was 19% of the ballot was fraud. Okay, absentee ballots, mail-in ballots, pretty much the same thing. They work as you taking the place of physically being at the polling booth as you mail in your vote, and your vote gets counted just like the other votes do. Now, however, Donald Trump, who likes to throw a conspiracy or some sort of cheating analogy on everything, and he is the biggest cheater and liar known to man at this point in this day and time, talks about absentee ballots being crooked and Democrats using the absentee ballot and other people, voting 3 and 4 times. And it's funny he mentioned that because the Republicans in Florida have been using the absentee ballots to help them get over the hump and actually win elections. So with that said, of course, he starts fear into Republicans about using absentee ballots, and what are they going to do? Show up to the polls. But the issue is, if there's more Democratic registered voters in Florida than there are Republican voters, that says one of two things. The first thing it says is that people do not vote. Because if registered Democratic voters voted, then you would have Democratic lawmakers and people in office. So that's a problem. Secondly, it also says that maybe the Republicans have been using the absentee ballot crooked and voting 3 and 4 times. Actually, all the stuff that he claims other people are doing, maybe they've been doing that in Florida. Just makes you go, I wonder. And with all this coming out, who knows? Who knows? Yeah, but that's why I say voting is very important. It is crucial, especially in this day and age in which we live. Voting is life or death. So you choose, and I'm not here to make the choice for you. I just ask that you vote. Mail deliveries could be delayed by a day or more under cost-cutting efforts being imposed by the new Postmaster General. The plan eliminates overtime for hundreds of thousands of postal workers and says employees must adapt a different mindset to ensure the Postal Service survival during the coronavirus pandemic. Late-night trips will no longer be authorized. If postal distribution centers are running late, they will keep the mail for the next day. Postal leaders said in a document obtained by the Associated Press that one aspect of these changes that may be difficult for employees is that temporarily we may see mail left behind or mail on the workroom floor or docks. The changes come a month after the Postmaster General, a major donor of the President Donald Trump, took over the strolling mail service. In a memo titled PMG Expectations and Plans, the agency said the changes are amidst at making the USPS fundamentally sovereign, which we are not at this time. The memo cited deep revenue losses from a decade-long decline in mail delivery that has been exacerbated by the coronavirus pandemic and says an overdue operational pivot is needed to ensure the agency's health and stability. The Postal Service is bracing for steep losses from nationwide shutdown caused by the virus and has warned that they will run out of money by the end of September without help from Congress. The service has reported a $4.5 billion loss for the quarter ending in March before the full effect of the shutdown sinks in. Okay, and this all ties into the previous story. So, the previous story we were talking about the mail-in ballots or absentee ballots that the GOP have been using to push their voting bloc over the edge because, of course, on the actual election day, people do not show up to vote. Many registered voters actually do not vote on the actual day. So what they do is they flood the absentee or the mail-in vote to where in which it pushes them over the edge. Now, with a lot of lawmakers and Trump allies knowing this, they have been secretly attacking the Postal Service. So now they have the new Postmaster General who has vowed to cut the Postal Service, citing that they've been losing money. And that part is partially correct, but the only reason is because of other avenues of delivery, like Amazon has a delivery service now, and all these other places have a delivery, so it's hard for the Postal Service to compete. However, at this time, it's a little giving the side eye that you want to cut all of these postal workers and leave and wind up having to leave packages and things for the next day by cutting overtime. Now, all of this is a part of affecting the vote because, again, if the voting is on the 3rd of November and you have absentee ballots coming in, if they're not in or they never get to where they're supposed to go, then what might wind up happening? we're all pretty, intelligent people here. That means somebody is going to be able to sneak a win in because ballots will be locked away somewhere, and then all of a sudden you'll be like, oh, where'd these votes come from? And you'll have a whole fight in the Supreme Court, which is more conservative, and you might end up with another Gore Bush situation. So to avoid that, I think the lawmakers need to start putting things or safety nets in place right now, even while they're on recess or about to prepare for another recess. It is too vital to let this just slip away. After the death of George Floyd at the hands of the Minneapolis police, protests erupt around the world, causing further examples of police brutality to be caught on camera amongst demonstrators. One police department that faced major criticism was the New York City Police Department, when brutal clips showed incidences like officers shoving pedestrians to the ground and police vehicles driving into protesters. Such incidences caused the New York Attorney General to carry out a report on the NYPD, which assessed their performance during the protests. The report, entitled The New York City Police Department's Response to Demonstrators Following the Death of George Floyd, concluded that too many New Yorkers no longer trust the police to do their jobs effectively and fairly. The report also shows clear racial disparities when it comes to how people were charged if arrested. According to the report, from May to June, there were 2,087 arrests related to protests, which is an average of 190 per day. A huge majority of the arrests occurred in Manhattan. Of the people arrested, 44% were white, while 39% were black. Significantly, more black protesters were charged with felonies. However, according to the report, 15.66% of the protesters charged with a felony were black, while just 3.57% of those felonies charged were white. Latinos made up of 7.75% of the felonies, while Asians made up 3.39%. The report suggests that a majority of the felony arrests were because of the plundering of businesses. Arrests, were dropped significantly when the 8 p.m. curfew on June 2nd was enacted, suggesting that the majority of the arrests were for violating the curfew and peaceful protesting. As opposed to the violence and plundering of businesses, nearly a quarter of all the arrests on May 31st were for felonies. By June 2nd, that figure was only 3%. The NYPD report comes as protesters around the country are calling for cities to defund the police and to invest money into the community's resources, such as violent interruption programs, housing, and healthcare. Last week, demonstrators occupied City Hall in New York ahead of the city's budget hearing. Mayor Bill de Blasio ended up cutting the NYPD's budget by $1 billion. However, many activists argue that the move didn't go far enough in diminishing the power of the police. Here we go, talking about the disparities once again of people of color versus, well, definitely African Americans or black people compared to everybody else. So we have the arrest of the protesters. Of course, arrest of the protesters, black people have been arrested far more than white people in the peaceful protests. But what's alarming is the classification of the arrest. They have been about 39% of the arrests were black by the NYPD during these protests against police brutality, and more than 15 to 16% of the arrests, these people have been charged with a felony. And compared to the white counterparts who were probably at the same demonstration and got arrested at the same time, only 3%. I mean, it can't be any clearer to anyone than that. As they continue to talk about defunding the police department and actually allocating those funds to other resources like community outreach, like job training and trade training, education, something to help further, get people off the streets, or all these things that you claim people are doing. If you give them something else, something they can value, something that they can feed their families with, and not just hopes and dreams and policies that go absolutely nowhere, maybe you could start to make a difference. But when all you can do is defund the police $1 billion, take $1 billion out of their budget, $1 billion. If you just took $1 billion out of their budget, imagine what their budget looks like just from taking $1 billion out. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's a lot of money. You can do a lot for other people with fucking $1 billion. That it's ridiculous the amount of money that gets thrown away for people to protect citizens, and yet the people that they are sworn to protect, they treat less than. So it's peculiar to me, but I mean, hey, what do I know? I do believe that the police departments need to be defunded, and they need to start working with alternatives, because obviously the police have their own biases, and it's hard to create a bridge of community outreach when the people who's supposed to be protecting don't, and the community don't trust them. So you will never get satisfaction that way. So I think you just need to scratch it and start over. There's nothing wrong with that. Change is good. In an extraordinary move, the Asheville City Council has apologized for North Carolina City's historic role in slavery, discrimination, and denial of basic liberties to Black residents. A vote to provide reparations to them and their descendants. The 7-0 vote came the night of July 14th. The unanimous passed resolution does not mandate direct payments. Instead, it makes investments in areas where Black residents face disparities. Okay, so in this story, in a historical step to right or wrong, there's a city in North Carolina that is addressing reparations for its Black residents, and due to slavery and discrimination and the denial of just basic, civil liberties, they're providing reparations to the people and their descendants. This will not come in the form of mandatory payments, but instead making investments in the area where Black residents face disparities. Now, granted, it is a great thing that you apologize and take responsibility. I think that's the only way people grow to heal and move on. You have to first acknowledge that it's been done, atone for it, and move forward. However, my issue with the talk of the not giving direct funds, but putting resources in areas of disparity, again, here we go with the side eye, because it's almost like code talk for gentrification. Um, because I'm sure, and I mean, I haven't been in the room, but I'm sure that is the talk of the movers and shakers before they drive everything out. It's almost like, oh, we're gonna come into this area, build it up, put new shops, let the people have pride in the area again, and get that economy going for that area, bring jobs into the area. It'll be great for the people that live there. And they build it, and what happens? There's no longer any people that used to live there. They don't live there anymore because they changed it, they raised the prices, and the people are out of there. So when they start talking about putting things in areas where there are disparities, building it up, it just makes me like, I hear you, but personally, yeah, we don't need you building up any more anything and kicking the people who live there out. You need to start really putting, if you want to atone for what you've done, then work on building what's already there, reinforcing it, making it better, not building it. And if you're going to build something like a high rise or anything like that, then you keep the people in it. You don't kick them out. You don't build it, kick them out, and then now they can't come back because they can't even afford the rent. That's the part that usually happens when they say things of that nature about allocating the funds into the community where there's disparity. Yeah, okay. We'll see. The National Security Council sent a list of allegations about Army Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman to the Pentagon after he testified before the House in an impeachment proceedings against President Donald Trump. According to a person who has seen the document and to others who were briefed on it, the Pentagon received the document, which alleged that Vindman created a hostile work environment while at the NSC, as he was on track to be promoted to colonel. The accusations outlined in it, if substantiated, would have kept Vindman from moving up in rank in the Army. The people familiar with the document say that it is not a typical evaluation that the military officers serving on the NSC are given when their temporary position ends. They are usually sent and asked to return to the Defense Department. The NSC is housed in the White House and is chaired by the President, although it's managed day to day by the National Security Advisor. The Pentagon did conduct a mid-level investigation into the allegations, looking for evidence to substantiate the claim about Vindman's conduct while he was detailing to the NSC. The people familiar with the document say the Pentagon conducted a mid-level investigation into the allegations, looking for evidence to substantiate the claim about Vindman's conduct while he was detailed to the NSC. The people familiar with the document. But ultimately, the military could not corroborate any of the allegations that was said, including in the list was an accusation that Vindman had verbally abused a colleague and a senior administration official. The list of allegations suggests that the White House tried to derail the promotion of the Army officer. The president said that he wasn't happy with and viewed him as disloyal. It could also suggest that the White House retaliation against Vindman for his impeachment testimony went beyond ousting him and his twin brother from the NSC in February. Okay, not gonna really spend too much time on this story because we all know that this president is vindictive and crooked, and so for those of you who are new, who don't really know what's going on in this particular story, Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman was the Ukrainian NSC official. Basically, he intercepted the call between the Ukrainian president and Donald Trump when Donald Trump was asking the Ukrainian president to get dirt on, if they had any dirt, or to find some dirt on Hunter Biden, who is the son of presidential candidate Joe Biden, some damaging information. So he then reported to his official what was going on. Long story short, Alexander Vindman was asked to testify in front of Congress during the impeachment hearing, which was not the trial, but the hearing. And Donald Trump, of course, did not like that. He found that to be disloyal. So they secretly was trying to get rid of Alexander Vindman. He was up for promotion in the military to be promoted to colonel, and they blocked it. President Donald Trump, being the head of the NSC, well, of the National Security, I'll take that back, of the National Security Council. However, although he is the head of the Security Council, the Security Council members do the day-to-day do the day-to-day business of what the NSC does. So President Donald Trump made sure that he got rid of or kicked out anybody who Alexander Vindman, because he was disloyal to him, because he testified against him, not because he was being an American and doing his due diligence as an American and felt like something was wrong and he, spoke up. No, it's because he talked about he did the right thing. However, the Pentagon said that they were not going to, that he could come back and still work in the Pentagon. However, sometime later, one of his top officials told him it would be best for him to retire because there were still things in the works to get rid of him. And that's where we come to right now. So it has come out that Donald Trump had sought to derail Alexander Vindman's promotion, as well as his brother, who had nothing to do with his twin brother, who had nothing to do with that. He just worked as a lawyer in the Security Council office, which was all in the White House. So he got one fired and the other one demoted, to the point where, like I said, his superior officer just told him to retire because they were still out to make sure that he gets kicked out of the military. So to forego that, he wound up retiring. But it's a sad state that we live in, in which the President of the United States will use his power to end people if they choose to speak out against him. Interesting. During a press briefing, the White House press secretary was asked whether the administration could consider lifting the transgender military ban that President Donald Trump first tweeted about 3 years ago this month. The administration is proud of the LGBTQ record and lists off several White House initiatives for gay rights, namely the pledge to decriminalize homosexuality globally, a change to the ban on gay men donating blood, and a pledge to end HIV/AIDS epidemic by 2030. None of those policies have anything to do with transgender military ban, and only one of them ending the AIDS epidemic is related to trans people. One of the few policy wins transgender people have secured in the past 3 years came thanks to not the White House, but to the Supreme Court. The court ruled that employment discrimination against LGBTQ people is sex discrimination. More than 110 Democratic lawmakers wrote to the Defense Secretary and the Attorney General last Wednesday asking them to lift the trans military ban, citing that decision. This policy is an attack on transgender service members who are risking their lives to serve our country, and it should be okay. Here once again, the Trump administration blowing smoke up the people's in the people's faces or up our asses, I guess, and we're supposed to just believe it. He likes to throw around that he is done such great things, but at the same time, behind the scenes, have chipped away at a lot of things that he claims that he's the only one who's done these things. As for the LGBT community, as far as this is concerned, this has to deal with trans officers in the military, trans military people. There was a ban put on that, but he, of course, toted around and asked the press secretary that why hasn't he lifted the trans ban on the military. He talked about, they've done such great things for the LGBT community, actually lifting the ban on gay people to give blood and ending global criminalization of homosexuality and so on and so forth, which, I mean, many of these things could be far from the truth. People are still dying globally for who they choose to be with, so I don't see how he stopped that. I don't see how he's stopped any of it. I think it's just, at this point, it's just, if I say it, you're gonna believe it, and you're supposed to believe it, which I think is straight BS. People, do your research. Please read. Please study to show yourself approved. Just don't listen because that's what he says, and you're just gonna go with it because he said so. Please, education is key, and it's not about sitting around in a classroom and actually getting educated that way. You educate yourself just by reading and knowing and learning. So please do that. We've become so much of a society of instant gratification to when you don't want to read anything, you don't want to do the work, you don't want to do the research. So if this person just says this out of his mouth, I'm supposed to believe it because he said it. And if he keeps saying it, it makes it true. That's ridiculous. Please just don't, please. Because it's really getting out of hand. The more you think you've progressed to a particular state, the more we realize that we are still in we're actually in worse times than we were 8 years ago, and this has only been 4 years. It's only been 4 years, and we are back. We're pretty much almost close to being where we were before Barack Obama even became president, and that's only been done in, we took 8 years and destroyed it in 4, which is pretty crazy. Once again, thank you for watching CCN Midday News. Hope you enjoyed. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also hit that notification button so you will never miss another news update. Have a great day. Peace.